Hi pet lovers, thank you for joining Gina's Grooming channel, and thank you for joining us on another episode of our vlog where we discuss grooming industry subjects for aspiring groomers or people who just want to be in the know. So welcome! Today's subject is going to be on how to behave when a pet gets shaved. This is a very important subject because it affects the well-beings of the dogs if we don't follow the right steps and prepare ourselves and our clients that we're going to be shaving a dog in the right way. So let's go ahead and jump in and talk about how to behave when a dog gets shaved. Now, in order to properly understand what can happen if you don't do the right thing, I'm going to be peppering this vlog in with some stories, some real live stories that have occurred in salons that I have managed when people did not communicate properly before shaving a pet. So a groomer took it upon themselves to make that decision for a client, and things went kind of south from there. So I am going to be sharing some stories so you, as an aspiring groomer, can avoid some of the mistakes that I have seen people make. I also want to let you know the demographic that I have been servicing for probably 13 years, either grooming or managing groomers in the areas of Calabasas, Malibu, Hidden Hills. Just want to give you guys an idea of that demographic. So even if you're not from Southern California, you've probably heard those cities before. And this is definitely a very affluent clientele that does not like to be told no. They certainly want to get what they want when they want it, which they're lovely, lovely people, but you have to be extremely cautious when dealing with clientele of this scope. So hopefully my stories will enlighten you no matter where you are in the world. And you say, okay, well, if Gina got through that there, I'm sure I can get through the situation, doing the right things and taking the right steps before I have to shave a pet. Okay, so the behavior, the changes in our behavior that we need to do for aspiring groomers is we need to learn to communicate better, because we need to make sure that before we shave a pet, we get full authorization from the owner. We never make that leap and go ahead and shave a pet without having the owner really understand what is about to happen. So I know you aspiring pet groomers, you chose to work with pets because you like pets better probably than people. I completely get it. But just know that in this case, if you don't properly communicate, who's going to bear the brunt of the client's anger? Sure, it might be you, it might be your manager, but it's also going to be the dog, because when people are angry, pet owners are angry, especially if their dog doesn't look the way that they expected it to look, and a shave is pretty dramatic, you have to make sure that you prepare the owner to go ahead and react properly, and you have to make sure that you get authorization, and so that the owner is the one responsible making that final decision to shave a pet, and they can go ahead and pick up the pet if they don't agree with you. So aspiring groomers, stick to your guns. If you know a pet needs to be shaved, stick to your guns. And again, if you need to have that owner pick up that dog, that's better than you taking it upon yourself, shaving a pet without authorization, and then facing those consequences. So what do those conversations sound like? You have to be very clear with an owner. So dog comes in, let's take the scenario, matted to the skin over a certain percentage of the body. It's a shave. You have to do it. So you have to call the client and explain to them that this is something that you do not want to do either. Groomers don't like to shave dogs. We just do it when it's necessary. You can use the terms that this is medically necessary for the dog. You can also explain to them how clumping feels on the body. One of the explanations that worked very well for me is putting duct tape all over your own body and try to move so that these mats are affecting the mobility of the dog and is probably causing the dog pain. So explain that to the owner. But when you're talking about a shave, use those terms. Say shave, shaved down to the skin. You can say that the dog's going to look like a baby seal when done. Make sure it's very clear to the owner when you communicate before you shave a pet. So let me tell you a story about what happened. I had hired a groomer, that very experienced groomer. We're still friends, lovely lady. But for some reason, that communication prior to shaving a pet was something that she didn't learn along the way. And she would just kind of do what needs to be done. And then as her manager, I would be fielding very angry phone calls. And so it took many years, believe it or not, to really get this groomer to understand that it's not her dog. She can't make those decisions for an owner. An owner has to be the one making those decisions. We as pet professionals and as pet groomers, we have to give them all the information and also tell them what our limitations are working with a specific animal. And then the owner has to make that call. So the story, one of the stories, gosh, I have a lot of them, but just to let you know how it affects the dog if you don't communicate properly, because the dog will be paying the price if you don't do this. Is a new client came in, had just adopted a dog from the pound, really wonderful, from the shelter. Little Maltese mix comes in for grooming with that groomer, very experienced groomer, and the groomer did not call the owner, sees the dog, and just makes the decision that this dog needs to be shaved. It was the right thing to do in terms of the ultimate thing that you need to do for the dog was to take those mats off. But because she didn't make the phone call to the client in advance and didn't get authorization, this is what happened to the dog. So dog goes home. Lady calls me shortly after, wailing, screaming and wailing on the phone. No kidding. And she is telling me that the dog is hiding from her now, hiding under the table. And she doesn't know what to do. When she had adopted this dog, it was so nice, and now it is not allowing her to touch it. It is cowering from her and hiding under the table. So I had to explain to this lady, it's not the haircut. Yes, of course, if it's cold, you want to make sure to tell the owner to buy a sweater. You want to prepare an owner that way. But you have to make sure that the dog doesn't feel the brunt of the anger and why this owner, right, new to this dog, is wailing. My gosh, this hurt my feelings so bad. It hurt my heart to know that this innocent dog is now terrified of their new owner because of a haircut and because of something that our salon didn't do right. Still think about it to this day, and it hurts my heart. Luckily, I explained this to the owner. I said, okay, ma'am, you need to calm down because your actions are affecting how this dog is behaving. It's not the haircut. The dog could care less, really, if it's shaved or if it has long hair. But it's the owner's reaction that's scaring this dog so much that this dog won't let this person touch them anymore. And the fact that this is happening and an owner isn't understanding that is something that as pet professionals, we have to make sure that we prevent that from happening. We have to go ahead, inject communication into this whole process and make sure that a person understands exactly what's going to happen if we have to shave their pet. Okay, so now we have gotten a strong authorization from the client. Again, if you don't get authorization, pet can go home. You can survive a bad Yelp review if this is something that someone is very upset about. But in terms of shaving a dog that is not your own dog without authorization is something you cannot do. Simply cannot do. So in that conversation, you also need to prepare the owner of how they're going to react to the dog. And you have to say things very clearly, such as, okay, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, when you come to pick up Fluffy, Fluffy is going to be shaved all the way down to the skin. Again, remember using terms like baby seal, shaved all the way to the skin. Their legs are going to look very skinny in certain breeds. You have to warn them. And you can even say, I know that Fluffy might look a little funny when you first see him or her, but make sure that you are still thrilled to see your dog. Make sure that you are happy. And make sure that the dog only feels good energy from you, even if, as an owner, you may be surprised to see your dog. So as a pet professional, as a pet groomer, you have to make sure you prepare the owner that the dog's going to look a little funny, and that upon pickup, to make sure that you put all that superficiality aside, and you're just happy to see your pet. You're just happy to see your fur baby. Now, some notes of caution in this is that you have to not only prepare your client, you have to tell your client to prepare the entire family. That includes kids. So kids are probably some of the worst offenders of this because as lovely as kids are, they want that fluffy puppy. So when Fluffy comes back and is not so fluffy, kids can sometimes cry. They can sometimes scream. And what it is they're looking at this dog and the dog is getting screamed at by the kid that normally loves them. And the dog has no idea why. So this has to be something that we prepare our clients. Make sure you tell them to prepare their kids and say, hey, when you see Fluffy, the last thing you're going to do is show your emotions in any negative way. You have to be happy to see Fluffy. It's still Fluffy. Your dog, even though the hair might not be so fluffy. So you got to prepare the kids. And then you've got to also be prepared about the spouses. So you might have one spouse that you're dealing with that drops off the dog. You're the one, that's the spouse that's going to give the authorization to shave the pet. That's the spouse that you have prepared to talk to the kids and to make sure that they're really happy when they see the dog upon pickup. And then you might miss the spouse. So the spouse might be the one picking up the dog. And oh my gosh, I can't tell you how many marital disputes I've had to mediate in this level. Sometimes the spouses drop off together, but just know that spouse one might not be communicating with spouse two, and spouse one might be the one dropping off, doing the authorization. Spouse two is the one's picking up, and spouse two is the one who's going to be screaming and yelling when they pick up the dog. Well, all right, guys, thanks for joining us today for this discussion. If you do want to hear more about matting, you can hear my 20-minute diatribe on matting on Gina's Grooming channel. So that is out there for you. But really appreciate your time, guys. If you like this video, appreciate you clicking that thumbs up. Subscribe for more like it, and we will see you soon. Thank you.